range, it should have been able to hit us with ease. As I hit it, it wasn't trying to kill us. It didn't even hit Nigel.
Ma'am, we've contacted base to provide further information. We should hear back from them soon.
Do you have any idea what I had to do to get those scouts here?
It was your gold moment out there.
There's a car at the end of the street. We should try and commandeer it.
Right, we know what we're up against. All corridors and air conduits to be locked down. We need to get rid of anything and anywhere that thing can hole up. I'll get the weapons. Everyone goes armed. You are listening to the Late Bloomer Actor podcast with David John Clark. My guest today, I consider a great friend, although we have yet to meet in person, having met in the online world of drama training with stagemilk.com. He currently resides in Brisbane, Queensland. He first got his feet wet in the acting game as an 11-year-old, making Super 8 films in primary school, and has been fortunate to then continue in the media world through the decades, working across a range of mediums, including film, TV and stage. He completed a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in script writing, before following a career in government, primarily in key leadership roles in human resources management. His acting career continued throughout the 1980s, with his first ever professional role being in the acclaimed 1981 Puberty Blues film, directed by Bruce Beresford. But it appears he is now entering the territory of the late bloomer status, with a continual flow of roles in independent and student films since 2018, culminating most recently in a fantastic role in the television sitcom series Young Rock, an American sitcom based on the life of legendary wrestler and actor Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He's also an accomplished voiceover artist with an extensive range of characters and accents. Please welcome Mr. Stephen Walker. I should have got a sound bite on here we can use for clapping. I thought, that's a bit cliched, but welcome
Good to be
to my
here.
podcast. Thank you very much. Now, I must say that you also recently supported my initial foray into filmmaking by providing a voiceover as the newsreader in our short film Sam, a collaboration between myself and my young bloomer actor son Connor for the 48-hour film festival. So
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Combining everything, acting and voice.
I love it. And I must say that recently you've just become a TikTok sensation.
That was a very
Spiderman.
very surprising Christmas thing that happened. I'm up there now with the cool kids, I have to say. I hit 1.5 million views on the weekend. It's insane. So yeah, it was just, that is innocently catching a spider. It was, but people freaked out for the fact that I sort of catch huntsmen with my hands, and so it's gone nuts.
That was great.
It's gone nuts. It's appeared.
And you had no plans?
No, it was just one of those fun
just
things. And I said to my son who was visiting, I said, I'd film this. And he said, you should put it on TikTok, go viral. I went, all right, let's put it on TikTok. And so it did. It did, so much so that Fox News have run it. It's out there all over the internet. I had a live cross with the Channel 9 morning show. It was insane. And I must say, they wanted me to do something, a bit different. And can you have a spider there? And so I caught another spider, and I had it in my hands, waiting. And it bit me. All along I've been saying, I've never been bitten by one. It bit me while I was waiting to go live. And, it had a little, just a slight tear in the eye, but it was all right. I was disappointed, though, that I did not wake up the next day looking like Tom Holland or something. It just didn't work. So yes, completely surprising thing that's just out there with thousands of followers and likes and, as I said, 1.5 million views now. Nuts.
Beautiful. Do you think something small like that, do you think that's improved your acting in any way?
I think it does, because we hear more and more that casting directors or producers, particularly network, the word is that they're saying, I don't want to see a show reel. Show me their social media. How many followers have they got? What are they doing? What's their social media footprint looking like? And so from my perspective, it was a bit of an unexpected blessing Whether or not someone of my vintage, they would even bother to even ask what their social media profile looks like. But if they do, I have one. And if you Google Stephen Walker or Stephen Walker actor, boom, up it comes, like filling pages of stuff because of the spider. And so it's got to count for something. I mean, this old saying of no bad press. Well, this was good press anyway. So, you know. And bring on a Steve Irwin role.
Yeah, well, you don't want bad press. I love it. And so that sort of leads in my opening comments. I alluded to your acting career started in the 70s, so in primary school. So we're trying not to show your age.
Yeah, we can go back to the 70s. We can go back. I like my earliest recollection of wanting to act was in second class. So what's that? 7? Ages of 7, 6 or 7, something like that. And a friend of mine, close friend of mine at school, had just been on TV in something like a Henny Penny commercial for fast food chicken that's now gone because of health warnings or something or other. And I desperately wanted to do that. And nothing happened. And then year seven, there was a teacher as one of those I'm not a sporting guy. I've never been a sporting guy. And there was an alternate activity for sports Thursday afternoons where you could learn Super 8 filmmaking. You know, this teacher brought in his own Super 8 equipment and we made films. I wrote scripts, ran the camera, but also acted. And so my first sort of delve into screen was back then in year 7, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it, but was such an introvert, and no one kind of knew how do you become an actor. There wasn't anything out there, but I was also terrified of getting up and what would people think of me. And so I kind of very quickly went to behind the camera and started writing scripts, and as a young teen would attend playwright weekends at the Shopfront Theatre in Carlton in Sydney, and spend a weekend with big name writers of screen and plays, and lots of other wannabe young writers who were teenagers from around the country. They'd fly them in, and I just caught a train because I was living in Sydney at the time, so it didn't have its glamour. Awesome. And that kind of got me on set. So in year 10, when people were doing work experience at the mechanics or the butchers or wherever else, I was on set. I was on set doing work experience as whatever that is, 16 years of age, and seeing how it all worked behind the camera and the drama behind the camera. And being on set, that's where I got to be in Puberty Blues as an extra. And like so many extras, unpaid at the time because I was doing work experience, but so
still happens today.
That's where it all began, really.
Oh, that is awesome. And do you look back now with your experience on sets back then and go, oh, wow, how much has it changed?
My sense is what has changed is the speed in which bit productions are happening. Back then, a good director like Beresford would be given ample time to do what he needed to do. But engaging me as an extra for no reason, for no pay because I happened to be doing work experience. I was the work experience kid on set. They still had budget constraints, but they just had a bit more freedom, I feel, than some of the productions that I've been involved with, some of the international productions, film or TV, where it's go, 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 go now. So I sense in that 30, 40 years, there has been a shift in the expectations of what's produced.
And so out of university, so you did a TV, like script writing, so you had all the intentions to.
Well, the funny thing was that the script writing actually came later in the 90s, and I did it part-time while I was working. What I wanting to be behind the camera because I was still too scared to be in front of it. It was the back end of year 11. I wrote to all the TV channels and said, this is what I want to do. This is what I've been doing since I was 11. That's what I want to do. Have you got anything coming up? And a couple of months went past. So I was like a week into year 12, and Channel 7 phoned and said, hey, it was Bernie Keenan, chief cameraman at Channel 7 in Sydney. He said, you're still looking for work behind the camera? I went, yeah. And he said, can you come in on Monday for an interview? And so I did. I didn't have a car at that point, as called a train. And then it happened. And so I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out of year 12 because back in the day, to score a job in TV, obviously you just have to write the right letter at the right time. I had applied to film, television, radio school at the same time, and they said that we just think you're a bit young, so their loss. so I do have my rejection letter from the film, TV, radio school, and it's very interesting. In that same era, and I'm now working occasionally I'll go to a director's acting workshop and discover that they were kind of potentially my era of had I have actually been accepted at the time, which is quite mind-blowing in some ways. But I started work in television news in Sydney and learnt sound, learnt lights, went behind the camera. I started there, so that was 82, and I started most of the news crews, because I was on news, most of the news crews were working with 16mm film, and there was one electronic camera that was used for live crosses. And in my time there at Channel 7, everything transitioned out of film and into 3/4-inch tape, and then into Betacam tape in that period. So it was quite an amazing period of learning to be there. And it was after that that I went on and after a few years of doing that, then life happened, and I started work in the Commonwealth, but I was still keeping up acting and doing singing lessons and doing musical theatre and a few other bits and pieces in that way. But that early job at Channel 7, that has been it's an immeasurable benefit to being an actor on set, because I know what lighting is after. I know what the sound is trying to do. I know what's going to work. I know what's not going to work. It just helps me having that as part of my DNA to know what's going on a set and how things are going to work. And it certainly helps me set up a room like this for self tapes, because I know exactly how to light and the temperature of lights and how to sound, just not speak, how to sound, how to set up the sound correctly. And it was, I look back and I just think I wouldn't have had it any other way.
That's awesome. And and that experience and all those learnings over the years is quite evident in everything I've seen of you since we've met on Stage Milk. It's just your self-tapes and your contributions to our community especially lighting. Some of the videos you put out there has just helped so many people. Even myself, I've changed the way I light my screens purely because of your videos. So that's perfect. So that sort of goes on to, do you consider yourself a late bloomer then? To your acting career now seems to be coming into a new world. Now, I don't know. Are you officially retired?
Look, technically. Yeah, that's right. Technically, I am. Look, there's money goes into my bank account every fortnight, so I guess that from it's free money. So it's not a government retirement pension. It's my own. It's my own contributions, and so
Your
I'm kind
own
of put the money.
investments. I like it. Yeah.
So it's not really free money, but yeah. So the advantage of that I find compared to so many other people is that my time is my own. I can dedicate it to spending as much time as I want, learning, reading plays, watching Netflix. It's a great excuse for watching Netflix, and just learning and building on my craft, because I don't have to worry where's that money going to come from that puts food on the table. I don't have to chase, and I don't have to chase shitty paid acting jobs in order to have something coming in. And so, so it is a benefit. I mean, my accountant doesn't necessarily see the acting as a full-time career yet, but we're working on that. So yes, in answer to your question, technically, yes, I'm retired. That helps.
And the late bloomer status, I'm doing a bit of research on that now. So there's two facets of late bloomers. It's those that have been doing something all their life and later in life finally gain some traction and momentum and success. There's Samuel L. Jackson, for example. He's been acting since he was young, but didn't really get his first major role or notorious, known in the industry until he was in his 40s, I think. So I would say, is that how you feel your career is going now? You're starting to come into it, and you've got that ability to make things work now. Like you said, you can just go where the work takes you.
And part of the early days of really dedicating myself completely to acting was about, I used to refer to it as catch up, making up for lost time and understanding how the industry works, because it's kind of unlike any other. And really getting to understand what you need in that space. How do you actually get seen? And not just seen by casting directors, how do you get noticed by everybody? How do you put yourself out there when you don't have a spider that you can catch and go on TikTok? How do you establish that? What do you need? What constitutes a good one of these? And also an acceptance, particularly whether it's face or voice, to recognize. Now, I'm a short ass guy, and I've never liked my voice, but I've recognized now that it actually doesn't matter what you look like or what height you are or what your features are or what your voice sounds like. There's something for you, because there's big D diversity and there's small d diversity on the screen, and they're still wanting that small d diversity of just a mix of everything. Not everyone has to be 6'4". Not everyone has to actually have these features, have a thick head of hair, or be 20 something. And
but streaming TV's changed that, hasn't it? Because it used to be you had to be blue-eyed, blonde, gorgeous, both male and female, and that's what everything was. But the shows like Breaking Bad have changed that. They've gone for that bikey look, that druggy look, that been living on the street sort of look. So everyone gets a go.
You gave those three examples just looking at me then. No, but yeah, no, it is. And that's, I think it's fantastic that the big D diversity push has meant such a change to the landscape. But in amongst that, there is still that small D diversity that's needed. So it's not just vanilla and plastic. With the exception of social media, not the reality TV. I think most reality TV still wants a bit of the plastic.
No, exactly right. No, and it's about people wanting to be famous, isn't it? And I really hope that we're still going with skill set, because I just read something the other day that they said way back in our days when we were young, kids were asked what they want to do when they grow up, and 85% of kids would say fireman, astronaut, police officer, doctor, that sort of stuff. But apparently just recently, it was the same percentage. 85% of children said they want to be famous. And that's all they've said. They just want to be famous. Not, I want to cure cancer and be famous because of it, or I want to fly the moon and be famous of it. They just want to be famous. And that's probably a sad...
It's all about the likes.
Society. Exactly. And
it's all about the likes. And I must say, 42,000 likes or whatever it is for the...
But it's hard, because if you start looking at it, even with my podcasts, I'm watching the view counts each day, and my wife's had to say to me, she said, when you get the spikes, celebrate, but don't let yourself get down when you don't get the spikes, because otherwise you just end up focusing on that little button all the time. I wanted to ask you quickly about training, but just want to go back a sec, because you brought something up in your opening statement about being introverted. And my opening podcast for this talks about introversion a lot, because when I first decided to go and do a course and say, hey, let's not just be an extra, let's try and do acting, but how can I do that? I'm introverted. I've done all the studies. I'm a classic ITJF or whatever it is. And then I found out in my research how many actors are introverted. So did you sort of go through that process as well in your head and say, have a realization, say, hey, I'm like a lot of them?
Look, as I said, back at age 11, I knew that, I couldn't possibly do acting because I'm so introverted. I tried to break it. At 14, I think, I signed up to Toastmasters at school, so I could learn to actually get up and shake away those nerves. Because, it's that whole, you hear surveys taken and 9 out of 10 Americans would prefer death over speaking in public, that sort of thing, and getting up there and saying something. So I did Toastmasters, and then later I did Toastmasters for years and years and years. And some of the leadership roles that you were talking about, which included 3 years as a diplomat overseas, where I was called on often to speak off the cuff, but a lot of public speaking, including the Bangkok-based Asia Pacific UN forum, where I'd be there with a little Australian in front of me and just have to talk. And so that helped break it down to make it possible for me to think about, I could do this as an actor. And I guess in a way, and this is how I think a lot of actors probably do it, because there are a lot of introverted actors. It's just introvert. Occasionally you see an extrovert, but mostly they're introverts. Who wants to go first in a workshop? And every actor's sitting there going, don't make eye contact. I can't do it. Not me. And I think it's because we get the opportunity to just not be ourselves. And so if we're not ourselves, people can't judge us. They can judge that character, but I'm not that character, so it's actually okay. I can get up there and I can be that character. You ask any number of those actors, can you get up there and deliver a speech as you? A lot of actors are going to go, I don't think I can get up there in front of people and speak. Could you actually read this monologue in front of people? Yeah, sure, that's great. I'll get up there. I'll act. And I think that's the advantage of becoming somebody else and playing pretend. When you play pretend, you can be introvert, you can be extrovert, you can be a psychopath. I know a lot of actors that are psychopaths too.
And they're not acting. And it does, and I think it changes you as a person as well. I mean, if you're introverted, you're always introverted. But I've had people at my work say, when I've said, I'm introverted, they go, you? Yeah. Really? And I said, well, no, because you know me in an environment I'm comfortable with. But even now, I'll go to an acting a show or something like meet and greet.
I can't do it. I was a lousy diplomat because I just can't do the cocktail setting. It's just one of those things. For me, there was always some text to send in a corner quietly while a function was happening. I can't network that way. It just doesn't work for me.
But it certainly helped it certainly helped with your speech. I mean, your voice training, your voice acting, it just says it all. And even just our one-on-one now, your speech is fantastic. And it shows me that I know that I need to go and do some sort of speech training because I don't have that ability to keep that flow going. I still have a lot of the arms and R's and my brain's not talking to my mouth. So
yeah, well, I think that's a big thing in training on voice. I think that's a side. Any late bloomer actor is probably going to have that disconnect from brain to mouth because it's age, Dave.
Age, yes. Yeah, I'm turning 49 this year, so the big 50 is approaching fast. So acting training, what have you done over the years? Have you done formal stuff? You're a bit like me where you've just done
everything.
Do you have any
Almost everything. I kept going with little odd things through the 80s and the 90s, just the occasional thing here and there, a bit of NIDA, a bit of this, like intensive workshops and masterclasses and things. Mid-90s, I did sort of weekly singing lessons to try and sort of build up lung capacity and that sort of stuff. When I decided to move into and actually do it, and it was my youngest who was doing some acting at the time, and he was we were on the way home. We were living in Canberra. We were on the way home from Sydney. He was on set for Love Child. And I was saying, look, I don't want to be a stage dad. You know, this is my story and the background, and I never followed it. I went behind the camera. So it just, if you think I'm pushing, just tell me to back off and whatever else. And so my 13 or 14-year-old at the time, he just said, so why aren't you doing it then, if that's what you wanted to do? And so it was that point I went, you know what? Smart ass. Yeah. And so I then thought, okay, so he hadn't done, he was, you know, heavily involved in drama and dance at school. And that was where he was getting his acting training from. And so I hadn't actually researched what was available for him. And so when I said, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And so you kind of, like a lot of actors starting out, okay, well, let's sign up to Star Now to see what's out there, because, you know, and what else have we got? Now, he had an agent, and I was like, okay, now I have to think about an agent, but I need to think about doing all this other stuff. What's out there? And so for me at the time, I hadn't quite switched everything off yet. It wasn't like an overnight, okay, cancel everything I'm doing. I was running my own business at that point and consulting back into government. And so it wasn't like I had a boss to say, see you later, I've resigned, but I had to wind that stuff down. And it to me, and living in Canberra, it was like, oh, I couldn't at my age do whatever I was. I think I was 50. I couldn't possibly sign up to a 3-year acting course. That's just not going to work for the family or anybody, particularly as we were living in Canberra. There was not a lot in Canberra. And so I searched and I searched and I searched and looked at what TAFTA were doing. And to basically all of my auditions were in Sydney, and it was long before doing the COVID or the post-COVID do auditions from home and self-tapes everywhere. It was drive up to Sydney for 4 or 5 hours, walk into an audition room for a non-speaking TVC, and 2 minutes later walk out and drive home again. So driving to Sydney was neither here nor there for me. And so I was like, okay, TAFTA's got some things coming up, but is there anyone that does anything online? And so that's where I first tapped into Stage Milk, and one of their sort of early adopters of where they had previously been, not where they are now, but where they were just starting out with weekly lessons. And so I tapped into that. I then tapped into Greg Apps early on, and stayed connected with Greg in one capacity or another for a good couple of years after that. So really tapping into what could be possibly done online and realizing there's actually a lot in the acting space that you can do online. Quite an incredible amount of stuff that you can do. But supplementing that with director workshops and casting director workshops and masterclasses with people like TAFTA, and then spreading that further and further and further and further. Particularly the last couple of years with lockdowns, there were times where I was doing 5 or 6 online classes a week, and just putting it down and putting it down and putting it down and connecting and really getting comfortable using this space as well, and being able to recognize that a lot of casting is in this space and callbacks, are in this space, and to maximize it. So I've never shied away from the online. And everything that you could possibly potentially cover, I've covered outside of doing a 3-year rolling or a long-term course. And it's been great. It's been great. I'm winding down some of the workshops this year, only because I feel like it's not that I feel like I've learned it all, because every single class there's something to learn and to practice, but more about the fact of how can I maximize the return on investment, and is it better to be learning through smaller productions or myself, But yeah, it's been fantastic, and it's been rewarding, and even as an introvert, it's a great way to network and build an incredible array of professional contacts and friends that I just didn't have before, because as an introvert, you know, your friendship pool is pretty small.
And both Stage Milk and Greg Apps, of which I've done both myself, have done that. And the amount of people that you now follow on Facebook, or you're in the Greg Apps graduates Facebook group and the Stage Milk group, they reach out to you. They know that you've got that experience, and it makes you realise, hey, I know some stuff. And you're starting to get that follow through now too, because we have to work in this realm of the audition space, and that's where we focus a lot of our training, because it's not about the acting. Once you're on the stage, you just on set, you just do it. But making you stand out in that audition space is the hardest thing. And clearly you've made that step over with your role on the Young Rock. So how was that experience?
It was great. And it was one of those things that when I look and compare my audition to what aired, they're pretty identical. And it's obviously whatever it was that I produced at that audition tape. And I'd done a few auditions for Young Rock, and I'd for different characters, and I had callbacks as well. But this one must have just given them exactly what they wanted, because there was no follow up, there was no recall, there was nothing. It was like off the first tape, bang, you've booked the role, and then how the director wanted me to play it was basically 100% identical to the character and the energy that I put into the audition itself. And it was great. It was at the back end of 2020. Queensland productions were still happening, but they had some serious COVID protocols in place. There were training and workshops to do about COVID safety and so forth that have become fairly much the norm now. But it ended up being the world's hottest day. It was like Brisbane's hottest day on record or something that we were shooting. And it wasn't in the studio at Screen Queensland. It was actually on location at a house in Brisbane. And it was a house with very little ventilation and dark timber walls. And, of course, it's set in Pennsylvania in autumn. And so I'm wearing corduroy pants and the priest's collar and a thick woolen cardigan, and had the character, my wife sitting next to me, pressed in to make sure the eye line was tight. The guy playing my son pressed into her. So 5 actors in this tiny space with 2 cameras, lights. They weren't the nice cool LEDs. These were hot lights. And there was sweat pouring down. And we had to pretend it was cold. It was one of those classic moments. And there was a point there after they'd taken all of my shots. They'd done everything. They were focused on the other actors now. And so they wanted us to press in even tighter and huddle in really close. Like her head was here. So they could really compress the eye line of the other 2 actors. Like, oh my God, makeup was no longer focused on whether I was sweating or not, because I was done. And it's like, oh my God, what have I got? And I reached into my pocket, and I thought it was actually my cloth mask, but it wasn't. It ended up being a tissue. So I dabbed myself down, dab, to try and get the sweat off. And the action, they do their thing, cut, and they just broke down into hysterics. Because unknowingly I had ended up looking like Norm Gunston with tissue left all over my face where it disintegrated and I had no idea. I looked down, there was tissue in my lap. I was very embarrassed, but it made everybody's day in the really hot Brisbane heat, pretending it was autumn.
Hopefully there's a photo.
I don't know whether there's a photo of the Norman Gunston. I quickly got rid of it, but I think there's photos of us sweating. A lot.
I love it. I just want to say, you've done the character training with Greg Apps, the same as me. Do you have a preferred character type you like to do, or that you like to play with, or are you happy to do anything that they throw at you?
It's an interesting question. A lot of actors love the dark. There's something about playing the dark, a likable dark character, and yeah, love that. But I also really like the comedy, dopey. How do you describe that character? You know, just the completely oblivious, dopey comedy character. I've done a lot of comedy training, and I've done comedy training with Darren Gilsheenan. I've done comedy training with the Foundlings, not the Foundlings. I've now got a mind blank out of LA. It is.
There's the old age coming out.
Groundlings. That's a Foundlings. I don't know what that is.
Sounds familiar.
Man, I know I was in another coffee or something today.
I'll have to Google that. We'll Google that later and see who they are.
So I love that comedy stuff as well. You know, I tend to be stereotyped in a sense into dads, good dads and bad dads. You know, there's the caring dads, and then there's the darker, alcoholic dads.
Yeah, I get bad dads all the time. I get more bad dads than good dads.
So I think, there's always role. We need dads in everything. So, that's all fine. And so, look, to me, I don't have a particular preference. I enjoy playing any number of characters, and I do bring a lot of myself into whatever that character is, because, we don't, as a rule, you don't hate any character. You've got to love every character. And there's got to be something good in every character. And I try to invest a lot of just Steve into any of those characters. And so in some ways you'll see quite a bit of me in there and go, is he acting, or is he just, just reading something? Because it just feels like that's Steve, really. Yeah.
I always get told that, you were too nice in that, because then they say, it's because you're a nice guy. And I said, well, that's great. I'm glad people are saying I'm a nice guy, but to be able to try and, especially when you're doing a role where you don't want that niceness in it, that's the hardest thing.
Maybe I find it too easy to actually be that not nice guy. I can very easily get into that guy that just will give you a look, and you just don't know whether he's going to knife you under the table or pat you on the back kind of look. That, I like those kind of guys.
And that means that your training's come through because you are a nice guy. So that makes me realize your almost winning entry in the monologue games. That was a tough piece. A bit of kind of background for people listening or watching is the World Monologue Games is you just submit a video as a monologue, and it's judged by peers, etc. And your piece was about a father that I think there's a term for it, I can't remember, but left his son in the back of his car, didn't drop him off at daycare, and then went to pick him up. How hard was that to do that scene?
Yeah, look, and it's for me, I haven't experienced anything like that, and you really go into that space of what if, what would happen if, how would that be? It's actually a piece that I did, I think, in my very, very first workshop ever. My very, very first one. And I felt something with it and was really easily able to connect to the emotion and the story. And I've performed it a couple of times since. You generally as more of an audition piece. There was a commercial that I did, or maybe 18 months ago or so, and they wanted to see a piece where you were delivering a monologue and you had a strong emotional reaction and broke down, and so I used that and had the casting people go, "Oh, thanks. That's I." I need a glass of wine now. You've great. And so it's always been one that I've been able to connect with. And the thing about the monologue games is that every step along the journey with the monologue games, you have to submit a fresh version. So you can just record it once and that goes all the way through.
Okay.
It's the same script, but you've got to record a fresh version. And it's always, whenever I perform it, there's always this in the back of my head, and I should stop it because it works every time. But it's always in the back of my head, am I actually going to be able to get there and have it believable this time round? And it's got to be first take or second take. After that, it just falls flat and doesn't work. It's got to have that energy right up front. And so I know a lot of people found it very distressing. And I think, good job done. That's worked. It's believable and it's gut-wrenching. And
yeah, I found myself going on the journey with you, and I could almost visualize the car and visualize the feelings that you were going when you turned in the car and realized what's happened. And then that last minute, please be asleep, please be asleep, please be asleep sort of thing. You felt that. So that was brilliant.
Enjoyed it. It was one of the, and it's very easy to play that one where the emotion is there from the start to the finish. But the one bit of feedback when I was getting some coaching on trying to do it even better for the games was take us on that journey if you can. So just be a bit more cold and clinical up front, and then as the character is telling the story, he's reliving those moments as if it was happening, and then you'll have the audience build. And so I adapted it this time round to previous ones, and I think it really nailed that journey, as you say, and was able to bring the audience along as well. So it's just those subtle things, I think. Yeah.
Would you call that your go-to monologue?
It's always it has been my go-to monologue, and it's just ironic that it was the very first monologue that I ever did in a face-to-face workshop. And so it's it is part of my DNA. I don't ever need a script or to refer to the script on it anymore because it's just embedded in my head with emotional triggers along the way.
And so that sort of leads a little bit into, I want to ask this question every time I do an interview because we're all older actors. Your memorization of lines, is that a problem for you, or do you have tricks or techniques that you'd like to share with people? How you get it done?
The funny thing is, it's always been pretty good. And somebody explained part of the reason why this might be. So the other thing we talked earlier about the fact there's a lot of actors that are introverts. There's also a lot of actors that have they're on a dyslexia continuum, and I'm on a dyslexia continuum insofar as particularly if I'm writing something or if I'm reading something, like a cold read is a nightmare for me because of my form of dyslexia, because I will see the patterning of a word, the first letter or first couple of letters and the last letter or last couple of letters. And my brain will just put a word in there that fits that shape if I'm reading something fast. And to give you an example, in a recent table read that I was doing, I was reading the big text, and there was a character called Whitey, and reading big, fast, pelting out, rapid, big text reading to keep the flow of the table read going. Half the time I read it as a Whitney, not Whitey. And I was like, oh my God. So then this was being recorded for producers and everything. And I'm going, and Whitney, blah, 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 blah. I was going, oh my God, it wasn't Whitney, it was Whitey. Come on. So that's the form of dyslexia that I have. And so when it comes to reading scripts, sometimes I will read it and the wrong word will be embedded in my head. And it will stay. To me, once something it's almost like the first read through, that kind of locks something in there for me. And so it's not that I don't know the script. It's just there'll be some words in there that will be the right shape, but the wrong word completely and utterly differently. And so the techniques that I've learned in the past, I've had like whiteboards where I actually write a script out. If I actually write a script and I can actually get it, the physical word written down letter by letter, I can actually combat that. That's the word shape, because it's not, because I've actually written and I've transcribed it. And once I've transcribed it, it's in. And so this voice coach that I had, this accent voice coach, actually said that what she's aware of is that a lot of dyslexic actors are off book really, really fast because reading's not great for them. And so their mechanisms for actually remembering, the brains are wired differently. They're actually off book really fast. And I'm off book really fast, really, really fast. And occasionally I'll have a word back to front, but apart from that. And so it's extraordinary. I'd love to run a survey of saying, okay, dyslexic actors out there, scale of 1 to 10, how easy is it to get off book? Because allegedly really fast, just because of the way things work. Because it doesn't take me very long to actually work through a script. I do a lot of speaking out loud, and I do a lot of pacing and mixing up where I'm going, what I'm doing, how I'm doing things, just to change it so there's no surprises, and do my very best not to overwork what I'm reading and try to just read it flat. There's you've also done some work with Jeff out of LA. Yeah.
Jeff Seymour.
That first read to go through, and that technique, that first read to just be bland, nothing in it whatsoever. Just to focus on the words, none of the emotions, none of the punctuation, really just working on that. So I try my best to go down that path, but I do find that, emotional guy, I like to throw in emotion and start planning what I might do. But, so whether it's a technique or not, there's something that I've always found relatively easy, is to get off script.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I'm learning techniques, and it's weird because for monologues I'll use the first letter process that we've learned on Stage Milk, and I've done monologues where in 5-10 minutes that works 100%. But then next month I can do it and it just doesn't kosher. And my biggest problem I have with a lot of scripts is I'll get halfway through and I'll be off book pretty much, but there'll be just one damn line in that script. My brain just goes, you know what? I'm not giving it to you. So it's really interesting how that works. So I know it's always interesting how people learn and how different it is. And I think my last actress that I interviewed, she had a similar learning problem. So she had to find ways to make her brain make it work. So that's good. So I'm just mindful of the time. So I'm going to ask the last question before we jump into the speed round and let you get back to your normal life. This is a cliched question, but as an actor, do you think you're making it yet, or you're on your way to making it, and or what do you consider it making it to be?
To me, I've asked that question many times along this journey. What maybe slightly differently? What does success look like? And in a sense, there are people where success is 100,000 followers and fame. Yeah. For me, it has been the opportunity to enjoy and portray a character, and I get that buzz, that success buzz, whether portraying that character is in like a homework assignment for like Stage Milk monthly thing, standing up in a workshop and being able to nail it, or take directions and be able to nail it, to be on set whether that's a big Hollywood blockbuster movie or a TV show or a student film or an independent, being able to deliver it, not even see it on screen, but just deliver it and have a director. Like the most recent film that I was in was the Portable Door, which is the Jim Henson production that wrapped July last year. It's out that's this year in cinemas and 2023 on Stan. So there's a particular scene in there, and I was given that scene that day. The morning his assistant came up to me and said, "Oh, has anyone spoken to you about doing this particular scene? The director wants you to, you've got to say these lines, this series of lines, and you've got to have it in this specific English accent. So the accent coach will be working with you from 9 a.m. and so there was a lot of pressure, and the scene itself was very high pressured in that there was a lot of physicality involved. And when you finish and the director calls moving on and comes up to you and says, nailed it, you just think, okay, that's validation. That's validation that it doesn't matter. You know, in the scheme of things, it was half a page of text or, you know, whatever the amount was. But, you know, wearing prosthetics and false teeth and contact lenses and playing a fantasy creature in an English accent at breakneck speed. But it's that nailed it that stands out and go, yeah, okay, wow. Don't need to see it. Doesn't need to, they could cut it. It doesn't matter. But getting that feedback. And so that feedback to say, yeah, you did it. Great. It could, and it come from an acting coach. It can come from someone giving feedback in a class. And that's where I feel like, yeah, I've made it. And yes, I'd like more opportunities to be able to do that in like a streaming show or, you know, as a regular in something or other. Sure.
Of course.
But I'm not holding my breath for it. I just get as much enjoyment putting down something for a monthly project for Stage Milk as I do on set.
I love it. And it seems to be the common answer that no one's saying, oh, when I make $1 million or when I get an Oscar, it's always about the acting. And I think it boils down to when you're not having fun and you're no longer doing it. So that's great. All right, Stephen, we're going to go into my fast round for a sec, but just quickly, where can people find you? Facebook, Instagram, that sort of stuff. What's your handle?
Facebook handle is?
Or your TikTok? I think you're under Stephen Walker.
If you Google Stephen Walker actor Spider, you know, a million things there. But certainly my website is the easiest thing in the world, which is actor Stephen Walker with a PH, of course. StephenWalker.com. That's the easiest thing, but all across all the other socials, especially TikTok.
Let's go. All right, let's go. Number one, what is your T-shirt quote? If you'd wear a T-shirt.
When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Nice. I like it. Your most inspirational actor, someone that guides you.
Inspirational actor. These are rapid fire, and I'm letting the system down here.
That's how it works. That's how it works. You don't have to answer. You can.
Do I lose $1,000? Is this is like 66 in a second?
Yes.
I don't have one actor that's inspirational. That's the issue. Yeah, it's
you don't have to. That's an answer.
It's too hard. It's too hard. That's not fair.
Who's your favourite child? Same question.
Don't answer that. The Adelaide-based ones.
That's good. I've already asked what is your go-to monologue. That's good. What's the latest show you binged?
Actually, currently binging Reacher. Reacher.
I've heard.
I've been reading the books for years, and so I got to say, I'm not a great fan of the Tom Cruise version of Reacher. I mean, the guy's 6'5", and Tom Cruise is my height. So anyway, so Reacher. Currently, we're halfway through.
Nice, cool. I'll put that on my list. It's a very long list. Is there any questions in this podcast that perhaps I should have asked you that I haven't?
No.
Good. I love it. Good. And finally, can you name one person you'd like to see on the podcast, either a fellow late bloomer actor or an industry professional that you'd like to hear from, or that you'd like others to hear from into the late bloomer actor journey? Again, you don't have to answer it. It's only if you can think of someone, because I add it to my little list there, because I'm only doing a monthly podcast, so it's not like I'm scrambling for people. So that's good. You know,
it'll be fabulous to flip it and talk to Greg from his perspective, because of the fact that Greg sees people at all parts of their journey. But my sense is, from all of the work that I've done with Greg, he sees a lot of people like us coming through, people that have late bloomers, or they're in their second act, and he might have some really interesting perspectives as to what they bring, particularly even if it was just focused on character. Do late bloomer actors bring more to their character because of life experience than younger people? It would be interesting to know. So it'd be fabulous to hear that.
Well, Greg's on my list for sure. So hopefully sometime during the year we'll get him on board. So
thank you,
Stephen. That's it.
That was fun.
I hope you enjoyed that. Is that your first podcast as a guest?
I've had some interviews. I've had some different production companies that do different things and have had me on to do a couple of things, but it's strictly podcast. No, you can. That's Virgin Podcaster.
First. Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming today. I hope everyone listening has got some great insights out of it. You're truly a wonderful actor. I'm enjoying being on the journey with you. Like I said, we have yet to meet in person, but we
one day. Next Fringe, I'll be down there for Fringe again.
So. Beautiful. And I'll be here. So
thanks, man.
Awesome, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye. You have been listening to the Late Bloomer Actor Podcast. Please like and subscribe on your podcast platform and share amongst your friends and social media. The podcast has been recorded via Riverside FM. Check the show notes for a link. A big shout out to stagemilk.com for keeping me fresh on my acting journey. And finally, the music within the intro and outro was written and composed by Aidan Hendry. See you all on set.